Today we're going to show you how to change a fan on your air conditioner unit. So I've already pulled this air conditioner fan motor. So here are your wires that come off of your contactor. So this black wire, I have a heat pump. This comes off my defrost board. That'd be the power that goes to the fan from my breaker or off the contactor. These two wires right here, your orange and your brown, those go to the capacitor. So that's what gives the motor the ability to start. So one wire comes through the capacitor, it charges, and then lets it come through the brown wire, which goes to the fan, which tells it to start. So the first thing you want to do before you're buying a new motor is you look right here. This right here tells you your volts, your RPM, your amp draw, and your horsepower. This is your horsepower right here. So you want to make sure all of those things match the fan you're going to purchase. And then you want to also look at your shaft size. So this shaft size needs to be the exact same of whatever you're putting on. If not, you'll have to buy a new fan blade. But inspect your fan blade, make sure that it's not bent or anything like that. Then the next thing you want to do, you want to take some sandpaper and you want to clean this shaft up as good as you can. Make sure that you get all the rust, because it's going to have some rust on it. And once you move it from where it's at and get it over that rust, it's going to get stuck. So you want to make sure you get all that off first. So we've kind of taken care of that. Next thing you want to do is remove this nut. And then you can it'll either slide off with just pulling it, or you'll have to get a puller and then you'll pull it off. So we're going to stop the video and then we'll come back to you after we've gotten this off. All right, we're back. We went and got a puller and we put the puller on. So the most important thing when you're putting a puller on, usually most shafts, they'll have like a dimple right here in the center. You want to make sure that this on your puller is right there into the center. And then once you do, you can tighten that nut down and then the puller stay in place. So we've got it pretty much there. I've tightened that nut. Now I'm holding it where it's in the center. All right, so the most crucial thing is getting this lined up with the center. So we're a little off here, I'm gonna adjust that, and then it should just come right off. So we're gonna put you over here and watch how this works. But you set this up, this locks your jaws in, and then you put an impact or a wrench on this, and then that pushes against the center while these pull on the outside. That's how this puller works. So just put you over here and you can watch how it happens. Once you get to the center of and your puller goes into the hub like this, you want to stop. You don't want to egg that out. If you have to buy a new fan, that's usually about 80, 90, or sometimes 150 bucks. So you stop well before you get in here, you'll egg that out. So we're gonna pull this off. There's our fan, and then we'll start taking the motor off. All right, so we got our fan set up. We got it sitting on a chair. So our shafts and everything will hang down in between here, and then when we take these bolts out, it'll just lower down into that chair. So it's kind of hectic today. I'm trying to film this by myself. So the reason why I'm doing all this is so that my son wanted to kind of start learning how to do some things, and he wanted to, sometimes I'm not always here to show him. So, and then one day I won't be here to show him. So we've come up with this idea. We can do all this, and then he'll always be able to look back and see what he needs to do, or what his dad would do. So I'm gonna take this loose, and maybe it'll help somebody one day too. But it teaches him how to kind of learn how to troubleshoot just little common things around the house. He's always wondered, Dad, how'd you figure out how to do this? Well, just learned. I just didn't have the resources. Sometimes pay somebody to do it, and I had to figure it out. So we're gonna take these 4 bolts out here, and we're gonna lower this fan out, and then we'll get our new one out of the box, bolt it up, and put the fan on, and hopefully we'll be back running. So we'll get back with you as soon as I get this fan out. But I got 1 more bolt to take out, and we'll be done. All right, well, here's our new motor, our donor motor. This is a universal one off of a older air conditioner that we put a fan on, and that didn't solve the problem. It ended up having to change the unit out. But so we've had this for a while, but this is a universal motor. You see how it works. So these were the bolts we took out from the top, and so the new fan is going to go into this plate that's on the air conditioner, that's universal. So it's going to slide up into there, and then these bolts, you're going to put nuts on the end of them, and it's going to tighten it up against this plate, and then we'll slide our new fan on to where it reaches in between the shroud here, and then it'll be where it needs to be. Then we'll put it back onto the air conditioner. So let me do that real fast if I have one hand, and then once I get it kind of started up in there and get a couple bolts started, we'll come back. All right, we got a motor mounted. It's set right in there. All the 4 screws from the back of the motor goes over. You see, so I have some never sees that I put on my bolts and studs, so that if you ever have to take it off again, you can. So one thing else is important. See that hole right there? You want these wires on your motor lined up so they go towards that hole, because we'll be putting this piece of pipe on there, and that keeps your wires from getting into your fan once you get through. So I'm gonna tighten this up, and then the next thing we'll be doing is installing the fan. You also want to put this never sees on this fan shaft. So you want to put it on there somewhere right in this area right here, because that's where your fan's going to be at. And then you also want to put it on the inside of the hub, so that way if you ever have to take it off again, it'll slide right off and it won't rust. So let me get this tightened up and I'll be right back. All right, we're going to pull these wires through the flex. So on the ends, it's not very big, so you had to stagger the tape. I'll show you once I get it out, but I've got it all set up here. I'm just using a piece of wire that I had laying around the house, and we're going to pull those through. So 1 second. I'm going to kind of push them in and get them started. I'm going to use my wire, kind of pull them through. Now, so you see here, I've got this one staggered from this one. Now I've got all my wires through. And when you get them out, you want to kind of either tie them in a knot, or you don't want them to go back into that hole. So here's my other 2 wires. Now, since this is a universal fan, we have more wires than the old one. I'll show you on the motor. It tells you how to wire them up. All right, so now pull these down, and then now I'm just going to tie this in a knot so it don't go back in the hole. So here is your wiring diagram, and we'll get to that later, but your white wire and your black wire is going to be your hots, and your brown white is going to go to the capacitor. So we get through pulling this in, and then the next thing we'll be doing is installing the fan. All right, so when we got this off, we're going to clean all this out. While it's nice and we're already here, the lid's off. So I've scooped out all the leaves and everything. You still see some dirt and everything. So I'll fix to mix up some coil cleaner. You want to kind of get all the debris out you can before you start, because what'll happen is then it's hard to get all that out. So sweep out all that the best you can. You don't even leave, because these are your drains where your water goes out right here, all around the side. So we're gonna mix up some coil cleaner, and then, so on my jug here, I've got the new coil cleaner here. can get this at any AC store or whatever. So we're gonna do heavy duty. We're gonna go to 4 to 1. So I've got this bottle here. So see how it's got the 5 ounces. So we're gonna go 5, 10, 15, 20. So we're gonna fill this up to 20 here. So give me 1 second, I'll fill that up and I'll show you. All right, so we got it to the 20 fluid ounces mark. So this is an acid-based cleaner. So you wanna make sure you wear gloves, you don't wanna get it on you. So now we're gonna add water to the 25 mark here. So we're doing it a 4 to 1. So 4 to 1 is your heavy duty. Heavy duty dilution, 4 to 1 here. You can do 6 to 1, depends on how dirty your coil is. But this is an acid base. You don't want to leave it on there long. Probably about 4 to 5 minutes. You just kind of watch it, and whenever it starts to kind of suds a little bit, then you're going to wash it off with a water hose. So I've got my water hose here. I'm going to slowly add a little water till it gets up to that 25 mark. All right. Put our lid back on. And like I said, yeah, you're gonna spray the inside and outside of your coils. Just don't kind of foam up on you. But just get any dirt and it'll get you to where you see how it kind of foams up. So I'm gonna put you on pause. I'll show you whenever I get done what it looks like. So I've transferred over to my sprayer here. So this is adding water and acid at the same time. So it's a little strong on my dilution there. And this is just like a fertilized spreader. But you see how clean it's getting it. Get all this dirt in here from the air sucking across the coil, trying to keep it clean. And so what this does, it sucks a little bit of this acid out of this bottle and it sprays it on the coil. All right, here it is now clean. I ended up taking the outside cover off and the foam died while I was doing it. So now I'm gonna put that back on and then I'll go back to installing the fan. All right, so we got all our covers back on. We got our fan back installed, everything's there. These are your 2 wires. If you had to reverse them, that's where you do it at. So we installed a capacitor here. It's a 10 microfarad capacitor. That's what this motor calls for. I don't know if you can see that right down there, but look at your drawing to show where it goes to the capacitor, and it takes a 10 microfarad. So that's your brown and your brown white off of this motor. Some motors may be different on their colors, but they come back over here and then they hook up right here on this capacitor. So it's a separate capacitor from the compressor. This is a dual capacitor here. This is our new capacitor we had to add. All right, so the black wire is installed right here. And then here's our white wire from our fan. So white's L1, black's L1, and then white is L2. And then the other 2 wires go to capacitor. So we've got it installed. All right, let's turn it on and see if we got the right rotation. If we do, I'm ready to put the cap back over there where there's wires to be covered up. All right, everything's right in. And the air should be blowing out. Right, if you suck it in, you got to swap these 2 wires right here. So air's going the right way. We'll put everything back together and we'll look there and see how everything's doing. All right, we got all our covers back on. We went upstairs and checked everything. Done a temperature check on the coming out of the vents, and we added a little Freon. My phone died, so I didn't get the video of that. But we got everything charged back up now. Everything's going good. We got 53 air coming out. Everything's set right on our temperatures and our pressures for our Freon, so it should be good for the summer. Alright, if you like this, just put a like down the bottom. We'll show you another day on how to fill a unit or how to test the see what your what your pressures and everything should be on your AC. Alright, yeah, just give us a like or subscribe down there.